Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to the Future History Project. And this time we are finishing up the Isaac Asimov's Robot City. This is Book 6 by William F. Wu, that was written in 1988, or published in 1988. And it starts out with where the previous book left off, and our group that are on top of the tower on Robot City, Mandelbrot, Walruff, Derek, and Ariel. And Ariel is sort of suffering occasional sort of memory fugues where her memories are sort of coming back and she phases out for a second, trying to remember them or re-experience them, actually. So she goes into sort of what they're calling a fugue state. She sort of almost she stares off into the into the distance, and she just sort of phases out for a few moments. Derek is worsening because of these chem frets, which are sort of little, it's like nanobots, and that have been injected into his system by Dr. Avery. And he figures they're taking over and causing him a lot of pain, and he's having nightmares about him being the Robot City, and all sorts of things. But they're on top of the tower now, and from previous experience, he knows there's a hatch down into Dr. Avery's old office. So they find the hatch, they go in and rest, and use the computer terminal to find out if they can find Dr. Avery, but they're not sure. The computer just doesn't give up any information. But he's quite bad, and Ariel is sort of, in and out of these fugue states, and Mandelbrot is quite concerned, and he wants to take them, or at least Derek, to the robot medics. But they don't want to do that because it would alert Avery that they're there. So instead, Mandelbrot and Woolroof sort of climb down the tower. They go back out and climb down. They don't go internally because then they would set off the security. But they go, and he contacts or tries to contact the central computer and wants an assignment so he can get somewhere where there's a terminal and to start asking questions, even though there's a terminal in the office. Yeah. So he does this, but he's, has to create a false identity for the computer, and he finds out that there's this great migration that's happening, that all the robots are leaving the city other than, the bare minimum, and trying to get the city working autonomously without robots. So he sort of learns this, and then Derek and Ariel try to leave, and they figure, well, they're going to speak to some of the robots they met on the first time, the supervisors, on their first visit there. And they do meet one of them, but his programming has been changed. All the robots in Robot City's programming has changed. They're not as friendly anymore, and they got this migration. They're all leaving to certain points across the planet, and they're just they're going to that location. In the meantime, because they do meet their what they thought was an old friend, he's alerted Avery, and the Hunter robots are now after them. So they get captured by the Hunter robots, but Woolroof and Mandelbrot spring them, and they defeat the for the moment the Hunter robots, and they hole up somewhere, but then they need some food. But then all of a sudden, another thing happens, which, this is Wu. The teenager that was on in his other one, book 4, was it? Yeah, book 4. No. book 3, book 3 or 4. Sorry, just looking here. No, it must have been book 3. Yeah, book 3. And it's just I just sort of roll eye again, but it's like all the time this is going up, they're doing stupid antics and everything like this, and it just gets sillier when he comes in and he lands a spaceship, small shuttle spaceship, in the street, and he gets sort of captured by or chased by the other robots and hunter robots, but Mandelbrot sort of, saves him and take him back to their hideout. But they need food, so they're going to go and try to get into the spaceship where there's food. Yeah, and they sort of, get the spaceship and they get it moving and then pile into it and fly up into the atmosphere. And then they figure, well, they start looking for things where, because they figure that Dr. Avery would want like actual real food, so they find cultivated areas, and they figure, well, he's got to be around there somewhere. So they land the ship again for Mandelbrot and Woolworth to get out, and then they go back up into orbit. But at the same time, like Derek is getting worse, and he sort of passes out, and Ariel goes into a long fugue state with her memories. And it just sort of gets, it really progressively gets sillier from there. So they decide to land again, and knowing that the hunter robots will be ready, but they sort of escape, and the three, while they escape from the ship, Woolworth's being chased. They've separated, Woolworth and Mandelbrot, they've separated, and Woolworth's being chased up a hill or mountain by hunter robots, and so is Mandelbrot in the city. But Mandelbrot sort of cleverly escapes, and Woolworth evades for quite a while. Then finally, they get sort of caught. They both of them sort of get caught, but Mandelbrot helps free Derek again a little bit, and Ariel, and they do stupid things. It's like, oh, well, they want to create a death of a robot, to cause problem and stuff like this, and it's never really explained like why and what this is happening. And it's like, oh, so it gets reported, and it's like, well, how is that gonna, they don't really, he doesn't really explain anything. It's just things that are happening to fill up space in the story, it seems. And even when they're in, in orbit, it's like when the kid comes, Jeff, he comes first time, and he was asking for places and things, and the computer was saying, oh, well, it's going to take a long time to scan and go down into low orbit. But then as soon as they asked the computer this time to find this little small patch of vegetation or with food, it can do it really quickly. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, they do find Avery's hideout, which is underground. They go through, Ariel and Derek go through a ventilation shaft, and they just, like, the actual dialogue that they have between the three is just so eye-rolling. It's just, they're acting like kids, and it just, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? It's just that it makes no sense for the story. But anyway, they go into, like, Jeff is captured. He sort of tries to take the hunter robots aside, and this is where Mandelbrot comes in and fights the hunter robots to let Derek and Ariel escape. But they go in through a ventilation shaft and they go underground, and he can't go any further, but she goes in and finds that it's like, a lair, like a very um, spacious living space. But there's all these weird things that are happening there. It's like these booby traps and just like, like they had Avery as a sort of a scientist who is single-minded and probably, a bit insane in the sense for his belief and his theories, and just, one single-mindedly, but they turn him into like a real crackpot here, and it's just, yeah, I don't know. And then you find out that Derek is actually Avril's son, and the fake Derek that they found, or the other one, was sort of a duplicate that he had made to see how he would react to the city, but without any knowledge of who he is or what he's doing. So how would that make any difference? But anyway, his whole plan has been, apparently, from the beginning, to create Robot City and then to use the Perihelion devices, that each robot has one inside him, and that they will go to different galaxies and create, tens of thousands of robot cities. And Derek will, through these chemfrets, these sort of nanobots, he will have an interface with the computer, and every robot in the universe, and he'll control them all. He'll be the biggest person, like strongest person in the universe. And yeah, but he had to wipe his son's memory in order to get him on the planet. And yeah, it's an interesting idea, but they sort of defeat him, and then Avery sort of uses a Perihelion device and disappears. They don't know where he went to, so they sort of sit back and have a good meal and sleep, yeah, as you do. And then Derek sort of goes through the process of this interface, and he comes out the other end, and he can interface with the computer and the planet really well, and he feels fine now. It was just the process of getting to there. So he's a perfect interface with the computer system, and that's sort of where it ends, in a sense, because they realized that some of the robots did probably migrate in before he shut them down, or shut down the order for them to go to other planets or galaxies. Like that's sort of a bit of a cliffhanger that's left at the end. There's just so many problems. Like I say, it's just Wu just seems to add on these things. They're running around chasing their tails. It's like, oh, we'll stay here, we'll do this, and then all of a sudden impetuously they go to do something else and then get into trouble. Like I say, it's like it's like teenagers, or a juvenile story. I never expected this stuff to be anything, high literature in any shape or form, but it's just, they were okay, the first couple, and the other ones, it's just his are quite bad. And this thing about making him Avery's son all of a sudden out of the blue, it's like they were captured before by Avery, and apparently, like, Ariel was in love with David, his son, and he didn't really like this, so she knew Avery, apparently. So why didn't any of this come out when they were captured before they fled? It just, yeah, it's just shoddy writing, But anyway, it was an interesting storyline, but we still don't know a lot of things, like where do these Perihelion devices come from? Did they create it? Did Avery create these things? Apparently so, but that's a bigger creation than the robot city. And why, if he created this robot city for the robots to be in charge uh, and everything, why is he all of a sudden, or I mean, why have it so there for humans, like it's all built for human inhabitation, this city, and where are the humans? Because he doesn't seem to want the humans, and then he's going to send it off to other galaxies where, for humans. But was there any idea for the humans to ever populate this thing? And if not, why have it set up for humans? I don't know, all these things. But anyway, the story isn't over, because I didn't realize that the second one, Robots and Aliens series, is actually just a continuation of Robot City. So because it is Robot City, Robots and Aliens, and there's 6 more of them. But in the end of Perihelion, it states, look out for Robot City number 7, which is actually this one, but it's actually Robots and Alien number 1. That was published in 1989. So we'll start reading these next week. So we got another 3 weeks before we get through to these. And thankfully, there's no William F. Wu in this series. I just don't know. I don't know why he was chosen for this. And Isaac Asimov wrote an introduction here, which is kind of like he would write an introduction on all of them, and it looks like he's doing the same for these as well. And he talks about the human interface, and he talks about with computers, and he talks about what he did in like Foundations, Edge, and so forth, which I won't talk about that at the moment. But he just says that it's like he's fascinated by what Wu did by things. So it's like, well, this should have been thrown out, as a story. But anyway, it's there, and we can't do anything about it. So it's sort of an unsatisfying end to this series, which, as I say, started out quite well. But anyway, there's Robot City number 6. And next week we'll be on to Robot City, Robots and Aliens number 1. And sooner we get there, sooner we get through those. Take care, BookTube.